Grounding is supposed to be simple. A mistake, a consequence, a lesson learned. That's what Mark believed. When his 14-year-old son Tyler came home late again, Mark didn't ask many questions. He didn't slow down. He didn't notice the way Tyler's hands shook or how his eyes kept drifting toward the door like he was expecting something bad to follow him inside. Mark only saw what he thought he already knew. Another careless mistake, another broken rule, another excuse waiting to happen. So he grounded his son, took away his phone, canceled the weekend plans, shut the door on the conversation before it ever really began. But what Mark didn't know, what he didn't stop long enough to learn, was that Tyler hadn't been careless at all. He had been trying to fix something that wasn't his fault, trying to protect someone else, trying to do the right thing in a situation no kid should have to handle alone. And by the time Mark finally realized the truth, the punishment had already done something far worse than grounding. It had broken the last bit of trust his son had left. Mark heard the front door close harder than usual. Not slammed, but firm enough to carry a message. He looked at the clock on the kitchen wall. 8:47 p.m. Tyler was supposed to be home by 8 o'clock. Mark exhaled slowly, setting his coffee mug down. He had stayed late at work, his patience already thin, his head still full of deadlines and unanswered emails. He didn't feel like negotiating tonight. He didn't feel like listening to explanations. Tyler stepped into the kitchen, backpack slung over one shoulder, hoodie zipped halfway up like armor. "You're late," Mark said, not looking up. "I know," Tyler replied, quietly. Mark glanced at him then, noticed the dirt on his sneakers, the faint scrape on his knuckle. He noticed it, but he didn't register it. His mind had already decided what this was. "You said 8, Mark continued. "This isn't the first time." Tyler shifted his weight. "I can explain." Mark held up a hand. "I'm tired of explanations." Tyler's shoulders fell slightly. "It wasn't enough," Mark said, firmer now. "You broke the rule." Silence settled between them. The refrigerator hummed. The house felt smaller. Tyler stared at the floor. "Okay." That response, calm, flat, almost resigned, irritated Mark more than excuses would have. "That's it?" Mark asked. "You don't care?" "I do," Tyler said softly. Then you should have come home on time. You're grounded. 2 weeks." Tyler's head snapped up. 2 weeks? No phone, no video games, no hanging out after school. Mark expected anger, tears, an argument. Instead, Tyler just nodded. "Fine," he said. That word hit Mark wrong. Not defiant, not sarcastic, just empty. Tyler turned and headed toward the stairs. "Wait," Mark said. "You're not even going to try to explain yourself?" Tyler paused with one foot on the first step. His voice was quiet, controlled, the way kids sound when they're trying not to break. "You already decided, so it doesn't matter." Then he went upstairs. Mark stood there longer than he meant to, staring at the space Tyler had just left. A small knot formed in his chest, but he pushed it down. Discipline wasn't supposed to feel good. That's what he told himself. Upstairs, Tyler closed his bedroom door and leaned his forehead against it. He stayed there for a moment, breathing slowly, counting in his head like the school counselor had taught him. "Don't cry. Don't yell. Don't make it worse." His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and stared at the screen. Unknown number. "Did you make it home okay?" Tyler typed back quickly. "Yeah, but I'm grounded." A pause. Then another message. "I'm sorry, this is my fault." Tyler swallowed hard. "No," he typed, "it's not." He didn't send anything else. Instead, he tossed the phone onto his bed just as Mark's footsteps sounded on the stairs. A knock followed, short, firm. "Hand it over," Mark said through the door. Tyler opened it and held out his phone without a word. Mark took it, noticing for the first time how pale his son looked. "You'll get it back in 2 weeks." Tyler nodded again. "Homework done?" Mark asked. "Almost." "Finish it," Mark said. "Lights out by 10. "Okay."
Mark hesitated, as if waiting for something. An outburst, maybe. When it didn't come, he turned and walked away. Tyler closed the door and sat on his bed, staring at his hands. The scrape on his knuckle stung when he pressed it. Downstairs, Mark set the phone on the counter. As he turned away, the screen lit up again with a new message preview. "Please don't get in trouble because of me." Mark frowned. He hadn't meant to read it, but the words lingered. Because of me. He told himself it was none of his business. Kids had drama, secrets, excuses. Still, the message stuck with him longer than it should have. The next morning, Mark noticed Tyler hadn't touched his breakfast. "You're going to be late for school," Mark said. "I know," Tyler replied, grabbing his backpack. "Hey," Mark added, softer now. "We'll talk later." Tyler paused at the door. For a split second, it looked like he might say something. Then his face closed off again. "Okay," he said. The door shut behind him. Mark stood in the quiet kitchen, unease creeping in. Something about the way Tyler accepted the punishment didn't feel right. It wasn't remorse. It was surrender. At work, Mark couldn't focus. He replayed the conversation over and over. Tyler's scraped knuckle, the dirt on his shoes, the text message. Because of me. That afternoon, Mark's phone rang. The school's number flashed on the screen. His stomach dropped. "Mr. Harris, this is Mrs. Coleman from the front office. There's been an incident involving Tyler." Mark's heart thudded. "Is he okay?" There was a pause. "Yes," she said carefully, "but we need you to come in." When Mark hung up, his first thought wasn't anger. It was fear. And for the first time since grounding his son, he wondered if he had punished Tyler for something he didn't understand at all. Mark drove to the school with one hand tight on the steering wheel, the other drumming against his thigh. The words, "there's been an incident," echoed in his head, multiplying into worst-case scenarios he tried to shove away. Tyler wasn't a troublemaker. He followed rules, kept his head down, did his work. Grounding him last night had felt harsh but justified, or so Mark had told himself. He parked and walked into the front office, the fluorescent lights making everything feel sterile and exposed. Mrs. Coleman greeted him with a practiced calm that didn't quite hide concern. "Thank you for coming so quickly," she said. "Please have a seat." Mark didn't sit. "Is my son okay?" "He's physically fine," she said, choosing her words. "But he was involved in something this morning that we think you should hear about directly." She led him down a hallway to a small conference room. Tyler sat at the table, backpack at his feet, hands folded so tightly his knuckles were white. He looked smaller than Mark remembered from that morning. "Hey," Mark said, softening despite himself. Tyler looked up, eyes flicking away almost immediately. "Hi." Mrs. Coleman closed the door gently and took a seat across from them. "Tyler came in late again today," she began, and when his teacher asked why, another student stepped in and caused a disruption. Mark frowned. "Another student?" "Yes," she said, "a boy named Eric." Tyler's jaw tightened. Mrs. Coleman continued. There was a verbal exchange, nothing physical, but it became clear pretty quickly that Tyler had been trying to help Eric with something before school. Mark turned to his son. "Help him with what?" Tyler hesitated. Mrs. Coleman held up a hand. "I'll explain what we know so far. Eric has been having trouble getting to school on time. His family situation is unstable. This morning, his ride fell through. Tyler offered to walk with him even though it meant being late again." Mark's chest tightened. "You were late because you were helping another kid?" Tyler nodded, eyes still down. "He panics when he's alone." Mrs. Coleman added, "Eric didn't want Tyler to get in trouble. When the teacher questioned Tyler, Eric interrupted and said Tyler made him late on purpose. He thought he was protecting him." Mark felt heat rise behind his eyes. "So Tyler took the blame?" Tyler's voice was quiet. "I didn't want it to turn into a bigger thing." Mrs. Coleman leaned forward. "What concerned us was not the lateness, Mr. Harris. It was how quickly Tyler accepted the consequences. Detention, a write-up. He didn't argue, he didn't explain, he just shut down." Mark remembered the word from last night. Fine. The emptiness behind it. I grounded him, Mark said, the admission heavy. I didn't ask enough questions. Mrs. Coleman nodded gently. We see that sometimes, kids who are trying to hold too much alone. She slid a paper across the table. We're not moving forward with disciplinary action. Eric's family is being contacted for support, but I wanted you to understand why Tyler's been late. Mark swallowed and looked at his son. Why didn't you tell me? Tyler shrugged, a small movement. You were already mad, and Eric asked me not to. Asked you not to? Mark echoed. He's scared. He doesn't want social services showing up. He thinks it'll make things worse. Mrs. Coleman stood. I'll give you some privacy. When she left, silence filled the room. Mark sat across from Tyler, really looked at him this time. The scrape on his knuckle, the tired set of his shoulders. I punished you without listening, Mark said. Tyler nodded, not accusing, just stating a fact. I'm sorry, Mark said, the words unfamiliar but necessary. You were trying to help someone. Tyler's throat bobbed. I didn't want to lie, I just didn't know how to explain without getting him in trouble. Mark leaned back, absorbing it. Who's texting you? The number from last night? Tyler hesitated. Eric, he needed to know I got home. Mark exhaled slowly. You should have told me. I know, but I didn't think you'd say yes. That cut deeper than Mark expected. On the drive home, Tyler stared out the window. Mark kept the radio off. 2 weeks grounded, that was too much. Tyler glanced over. So we reset. Grounding is off. We'll talk about boundaries, about safety, about how to help without hiding. Tyler nodded, cautious hope creeping in. Okay. At home, Mark handed Tyler his phone back. Tyler looked surprised. You're sure? I am, but we're adding a rule. If you're helping someone and it puts you at risk or gets you in trouble, we talk first. Tyler considered that. Even if you're tired? Mark managed a small smile. Especially then. That evening, Mark cooked dinner and actually waited for Tyler to sit before starting. Halfway through, Mark noticed Tyler rubbing his knuckle. What happened there? Tyler hesitated, then told him about walking Eric past a loose dog, about shoving the gate closed when it swung back, about choosing to be late rather than leave Eric alone. Mark listened, didn't interrupt. Later, as Tyler headed upstairs, Mark called after him. Hey. Tyler turned. You did the right thing today, helping someone who needed it. Tyler nodded, eyes shining just a little. Thanks. When Tyler disappeared into his room, Mark stood in the kitchen and let the relief wash over him, followed by a sobering realization. If the school hadn't called, he might never have known. He would have kept grounding his son for mistakes that weren't mistakes at all. And that thought stayed with him as night settled in, pressing him to do better tomorrow. The house felt different after dinner, not lighter exactly, more aware. Mark noticed it in the way Tyler rinsed his plate and set it carefully in the rack, like he didn't want to make noise or invite attention. Mark noticed it in himself, too, in the way he slowed down instead of rushing to the sink, choosing to stand there and watch his son move through the small rituals of the evening. Homework? Mark asked. Almost done, Tyler said. Just math. I'll be in the living room, Mark replied, if you need help. Tyler nodded, surprised again. It was settled, but Mark saw it, the flicker of relief that comes when an offer feels real. Later, when Tyler brought his notebook down, Mark pulled out a chair. They worked through the problems together. Tyler explained his thinking, hesitating at first, then finding his rhythm. Mark listened, resisted the urge to correct too quickly. He realized how long it had been since he'd simply sat with his son without an agenda. After the last problem, Tyler closed the notebook and didn't get up. There's more, he said quietly. Mark waited. Tyler took a breath. It's not just Eric. Mark nodded. Okay? Tyler stared at the table. I've been helping him for weeks, not just walking to school, food sometimes, letting him charge his phone at the library, making sure he texts his aunt when he's safe. Mark's chest tightened. That's a lot for you to handle alone. I didn't think of it like that, Tyler said. It just felt like if I didn't, nobody would. Mark leaned back, processing the weight of that sentence. How did it start? Bus stop, Tyler said. He was shaking, said his ride bailed.
I walked him, then it kept happening. And you didn't tell me because, Tyler shrugged, I didn't want to make it worse, and I didn't want to disappoint you. There it was again, the fear of disappointing him, of being misunderstood. Mark rubbed his hands together. I need you to hear this. Helping is good. Doing it alone isn't. Tyler nodded. I know. Now. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Tyler spoke again. There's something else. Mark braced himself. I'm listening. Tyler's voice dropped. Eric's dad shows up sometimes. Not a good way. That's why Eric panics. Mark's jaw tightened. Has he hurt him? Tyler shook his head quickly. No, but he scares him. A lot. Mark exhaled slowly, choosing his words. That's something adults need to handle. I know. That's why I didn't want to say anything. Mark reached across the table, palm up. Tyler hesitated, then placed his hand there. You don't have to protect everyone, and you don't have to protect me from the truth. The next day, Mark called the school counselor and asked for a meeting. He didn't ask Tyler to come. He wanted to understand the system first. The counselor explained what support looked like when families were unstable, how schools could connect kids to resources without blowing up their lives. Mark listened, took notes, asked questions. That afternoon, Mark picked Tyler up instead of letting him walk. In the car, Tyler fidgeted with the strap of his backpack. I talked to the counselor. Tyler's shoulders tensed. Is Eric in trouble? No, Mark said quickly. He's getting help, and we're going to make sure it doesn't fall on you. Tyler absorbed it. Okay. At home, Tyler's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then at Mark. It's Eric. You can answer, Mark said. I'm right here. Tyler typed back. My dad talked to the counselor. They're helping. You're not alone. A reply came almost immediately. Thank you. I thought I messed everything up. Tyler smiled faintly. He's scared. I know. We'll handle it together. That night, Tyler slept better. Mark noticed because the house was quieter. No pacing, no light under the door at midnight. Mark sat in the living room, reading but not turning pages, replaying moments he wished he'd handled differently. The grounding, the impatience, the way he'd closed conversations before they could open. The following week brought adjustments. Mark set clearer expectations about curfew, but also clearer invitations to talk. Tyler checked in when plans changed. Mark asked questions before making decisions. It wasn't perfect, there were missteps, but there was movement. One afternoon, Mark got a call from Eric's aunt. She thanked him for stepping in, for listening, for not escalating when fear could have taken over. Mark listened more than he spoke. Your son's a good kid, she said. He kept my nephew going when he felt invisible. Mark felt the words settle. Invisible. He thought of Tyler, quiet and steady, carrying more than anyone realized. That evening, Mark found Tyler on the porch, watching the sky darken. Eric's aunt called, Mark said. Tyler turned, nervous. What did she say? That you matter, Mark replied, and that you helped when it counted. Tyler swallowed. I didn't want credit. I know, Mark said, but you deserve to be seen. They sat side by side, the space between them comfortable now. I grounded you because I thought you were careless, Mark said, but you were careful. Too careful, maybe. Tyler smiled a little. I didn't want to mess up. You didn't, Mark said. I did. Tyler nodded. Fair. Later, as Tyler headed inside, he paused. Dad? Yeah? Thanks for listening this time. Mark watched him go, feeling the quiet resolve settle in. Listening wasn't a single moment. It was a habit, one he intended to keep. The next few days settled into a rhythm that felt new to both of them. Not easier, just more honest. Mark noticed how often Tyler paused before answering questions, not because he was hiding anything, but because he was checking whether it was safe to say what he really thought. Each time Mark waited instead of rushing him, something softened between them. On Wednesday afternoon, Mark came home earlier than usual. The house was quiet, sunlight slanting across the living room floor. Tyler's backpack sat by the couch, heavier than it should have been, stuffed with binders and notebooks that looked like they belonged to an adult's schedule, not a teenager's life. Tyler was in his room, door open, sorting through papers. When he heard Mark, he looked up. Hey, he said.
Hey, Mark replied. I got off early. Thought we could grab dinner later. Tyler nodded. Okay. Mark leaned against the doorframe. You've been doing a lot lately. School, helping Eric, keeping track of things. Tyler shrugged, the familiar movement. It's fine. Mark didn't let that answer close the conversation. Is it? Tyler hesitated. He sat down on the edge of his bed and stared at the papers in his hands. I don't know how to stop, he admitted. If I stop paying attention, things fall apart. Mark sat across from him. What things? Tyler sighed, finally setting the papers down. Everyone expects me to be responsible. Teachers, friends, you, even Mom used to. The mention of Tyler's mother hung in the air. She had passed away years earlier, but her absence still shaped the space in the room. I don't want to disappoint anyone, so when something goes wrong, I just handle it, even if it's not my job. Mark felt a familiar ache rise in his chest. That's a heavy role for a kid. Tyler looked up. Someone has to do it. Not you. Not alone. That evening, they went out for burgers. It wasn't a big gesture, just a shared booth and a plate of fries between them, but Mark noticed how Tyler relaxed in small ways, how he laughed when ketchup splattered, how he talked about a science project without worrying about how it sounded. On the drive home, Tyler grew quiet again. Eric texted, he said. Mark glanced over. Everything okay? Yeah, he's staying with his aunt now. He says it feels weird, like he doesn't know what to do when things are calm. Mark nodded. That makes sense. Tyler frowned. I get that feeling. They sat with that truth for a moment. The next day, Mark received an email from the school counselor requesting a follow-up meeting. He asked Tyler if he wanted to come this time. I don't have to, Tyler said quickly. You don't, Mark agreed, but you can if you want. Tyler considered it. Okay. At the meeting, the counselor spoke about boundaries, how empathy was a strength, but only when paired with support. She talked about kids who become the responsible one too early, who learn to manage other people's crises before they learn how to ask for help themselves. Mark listened closely. Tyler listened too, arms crossed but attentive. It's not a flaw, the counselor said, looking at Tyler. It's a skill. But skills need guidance. Tyler nodded slowly, as if something was finally being named out loud. On the way home, Tyler broke the silence. I thought being responsible meant never needing help. Mark shook his head. Being responsible means knowing when to ask for it. That weekend, Mark made a point to loosen the schedule. They worked on the car together, then watched a game on TV, yelling at the screen like they used to. Tyler seemed lighter, less coiled, but Mark also noticed moments when Tyler drifted, when his eyes followed his phone or his thoughts slipped away. Sunday night, Mark found Tyler sitting on the back steps, staring into the dark. You okay? Mark asked. Tyler shrugged. Just thinking. Mark sat beside him. About what? About how fast everything can change, Tyler said. One mistake and suddenly everyone thinks you're the problem. Mark winced. I did that to you. Tyler nodded, but there was no accusation in it. I know you didn't mean to. That doesn't undo it, Mark said, but I'm trying to make it right. Tyler looked at him. I see that. A breeze rustled the trees. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked. I was scared when you grounded me, not because of the punishment, because I thought, if you didn't believe me, then no one would. Mark swallowed. I don't ever want you to feel that way again. Tyler's voice was steady when he replied. Then keep asking questions. Mark nodded. Deal. Later that night, Mark lay awake thinking about the version of fatherhood he'd inherited, the one that valued obedience over understanding, rules over context. He realized how easily he'd slipped into it when he was tired, how grounding had become a shortcut for conversation. The next morning, Mark changed something small but meaningful. He wrote a note and left it on the kitchen counter where Tyler would see it before school. If plans change, text me. If you're late, tell me why. If you mess up, we'll talk first. Tyler read it, folded it carefully, and slipped it into his backpack. At school, Tyler noticed a shift too. Teachers checked in more often, not suspiciously, but supportively. Eric waved to him from across the hall, a shy smile on his face. The weight Tyler carried didn't vanish, but it redistributed. That afternoon, Tyler came home on time. He set his backpack down and walked into the kitchen. "I told Eric I can't fix everything for him," he said. Mark looked up. "How did that go?" "He was mad for a minute," admitted Tyler. "Then he said he understood." Mark smiled. "That's growth for both of you." Tyler leaned against the counter, thoughtful. "I still want to help people." "I know. We'll figure out how to do it without hurting you." As evening settled in, Mark felt something steady take hold. They hadn't erased the mistake, they hadn't undone the grounding or the doubt it caused, but they'd built something stronger in its place, a way of talking that left room for context, for compassion, for truth. And Mark understood now. The real mistake hadn't been Tyler coming home late. It had been assuming fault without understanding the weight his son was carrying. Tomorrow they would keep practicing, listening, asking, adjusting. For the first time in a long while, that felt enough.
The Monday after everything settled felt strangely ordinary. The alarm rang, coffee brewed, backpacks were packed. It was the kind of morning Mark used to rush through without thinking, but now every small moment felt heavier, like it carried meaning he hadn't noticed before. Tyler came into the kitchen dressed for school, hoodie zipped, hair still damp from a quick shower. He poured cereal and sat at the table, scrolling through his phone. Mark watched him for a moment before speaking. "You on time today?" Mark said lightly. Tyler smiled faintly. "Yeah." There was no tension in his voice, no defensiveness, just a simple answer. Mark nodded. "Thanks for checking in last night about your plans." Tyler shrugged. "It helps knowing I can." They ate quietly, but it wasn't the uncomfortable silence they'd grown used to. It was easier now, less guarded. Before Tyler left, Mark stopped him at the door. "Hey," he said, "I want to say something." Tyler paused. "Okay?" "I grounded you before I understood what was really happening. I can't undo that, but I need you to know that mistake is on me." Tyler's eyebrows knit together slightly. "You were trying to do what you thought was right." "I was," Mark agreed, "but I didn't listen first, and that matters." Tyler studied his father for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, it does." Mark waited, unsure if there was more. Tyler added quietly, "But you're listening now." That felt like forgiveness, not loud or dramatic, but real. That afternoon, Mark left work early again, not because of a crisis, but because he wanted to. He picked Tyler up from school and suggested ice cream. Tyler raised an eyebrow, suspicious but smiling. At the shop, they sat in a booth with melting cones between them. "You know," said Tyler after a moment, "I used to think being grounded meant you didn't trust me." Mark winced. I'm guessing it felt that way. "It did," said Tyler honestly, "like one mistake erased everything else." Mark leaned back, absorbing that. "I thought grounding was teaching responsibility. Sometimes it just teaches kids to stop talking." The words landed hard, but not cruel, just true. "I don't want that," Mark said. "I don't want you to feel like you can't come to me." Tyler nodded. "Then don't assume I'm the problem." Mark smiled sadly. "Fair." A few weeks later, the school counselor called again, not with a problem, but with an update. Eric was adjusting well with his aunt. His grades were stabilizing. He'd joined an after-school program. "You helped start that," she told Mark, "by listening to your son." Mark hung up and felt something shift inside him. The lesson hadn't just been for Tyler. It had been for him, too. That evening, Mark found Tyler in the garage, tinkering with the bike they'd been fixing together. "Counselor called," Mark said. "Eric's doing better." Tyler smiled, tightening a bolt. "That's good." Mark leaned against the workbench. "You didn't cause the problem, but you helped change the outcome." Tyler looked up. "I just didn't want him to feel alone." Mark nodded.
Neither did I just forgot how to show it. They worked side by side for a while, the quiet filled with the sound of tools and easy conversation. No urgency, no pressure. Later that night, Tyler sat at his desk doing homework when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then called out, "Dad?" Mark appeared in the doorway. "Yeah? I might be late tomorrow, study group." Mark waited. "What time?" "Probably around 8. Mark nodded. "Text me if it changes." Tyler smiled. "I will." That simple exchange felt like a victory. On Sunday, Mark pulled out an old photo album, one he hadn't opened in years. He sat with Tyler on the couch, flipping through pages of memories, birthday cakes, camping trips, school plays. "There," Tyler said, pointing. "That one." It was a photo of Tyler at 8 years old, missing a front tooth, holding a homemade sign that read, "I tried my best." Mark laughed softly. "Your mom made that sign." Tyler's smile faded into something gentler. "She always listened." Mark swallowed. "I want to be like that." Tyler looked at him. "You are, just slower." They both laughed. Mark closed the album and set it aside. "I used to think discipline was about control," he admitted, "about making sure you didn't mess up." Tyler shrugged. "Everyone messes up." "I know that now," Mark said. "What matters is what happens after." That night, as Tyler got ready for bed, he stopped at Mark's doorway. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "I'm glad you figured it out, about the grounding." Mark smiled. "Me too." Tyler hesitated, then added, "I know I'll still mess up sometimes." "So will I. We'll deal with it together." Tyler nodded and headed to his room. Mark turned off the lights downstairs and stood in the quiet for a moment, thinking about how close he'd come to missing something important, how easily he'd punished a mistake without understanding the story behind it. He understood now. Grounding his son hadn't taught responsibility. Listening had. And that lesson, earned the hard way, was one he planned to carry forward, not just as a father, but as someone who finally learned to ask why before deciding who was at fault.